morning, everyone. Welcome to this Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland scholar orientation session. It's not a particularly heavy session. Please just sit back, chill, enjoy yourself. Guy up in the top corner on the first screen is Phil, and he's the techie for today. John in my third screen, John Dehnel, he is running the chat box for today. So if you have any questions or concerns or anything, or just general things that come up, please use the chat facility to John. We do have Q&A sessions throughout today so that you can ask questions, and hopefully John will be able to answer them while we're all here. If when we're in the Q&A session and you want to ask a question, because we've got so many people, can you please use the hands up facility on the that's part of Zoom? Any questions? Do that. Yeah, we've got 100. We're expecting 102 scholars here today, so you are all scholars of Rotary who are in the UK. It made me laugh because following a COVID year where we had 90, we've actually got more this year, which surprised us, and we thought the numbers would be less. But please do sit back and enjoy today. It's more information on Rotary, how you got to be here and everything else. So please enjoy the session. If you have questions, ask, and certainly reach out to us afterwards if you still have questions. It is now my huge pleasure to introduce Eve Conway to talk about her Rotary journey. Eve, thank you very much indeed.
And thank you very much as well, Adrian. And good morning, everyone. Great to see so many Rotary Global Scholars. Welcome to you all. You are embarking on an amazing, life-changing experience. And how do I know that? Well, being a Rotary Scholar myself completely changed my life. It helped me move forward in my career as a multimedia journalist. It also showed me the power of Rotary and how Rotary not only changes your life, but also enables you to change other lives for the better too. So let me tell you about my Rotary journey. And I'm going to ask our wonderful technical wizard, Phil, to please start my PowerPoint. So first of all, as a Rotary scholar, I studied here, right here at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. I was at the Medill School of Journalism. And you can see there's a bit of snow there. So it was in wintertime that picture was taken. And Evanston is, of course, the home of Rotary International. So I found out a lot about Rotary too. And what an amazing time it was. If you can move the slide on. If you can move the slide on, Phil. It was a very hands-on degree. I was based in Medill's Chicago newsroom and then went to work in their news service in Washington, D.C., where I was Washington correspondent for CBS TV affiliate in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Here I am with two of my colleagues in the Washington newsroom, including Tony, who went on to become a TV anchorman in California. And I have to tell you, it was quite fun while I was there, obviously, but 4 doors away from the White House. But I did get slightly worried about what the people in Tulsa thought about an English Washington correspondent. And the news director there said, Eve, just don't worry. I can't do the Okie accent, by the way. Don't worry about it. He said, you're British and you sound so intelligent at the start of our hour-long news broadcast that people just stop and listen. And anyway, we've just got a new country and western DJ, and he's British as well. So there we go. That was fun. I mean, it was an incredible experience that helped me progress in my media career, and going on really from working in newspapers before I went out to America. And then when I came back to the UK, I went to work in independent TV and radio, and then at BBC News as a reporter, producer, newsreader, presenter, news editor, and documentary maker. So if you can please change the slide. And here we are, I'm in the BBC newsroom with some Rotary Young Citizen Award winners. That's the project that I started between Rotary and BBC News. at that time, my career started to collide, if you like, or it came together with Rotary, which was fantastic. I also went on to produce BBC TV documentaries after my first documentary, A Journey with Cherie Blair, Fighting Breast Cancer in Pakistan, which came about through a Rotary contact I had met in London, actually. He came from Pakistan. He started the Pink Ribbon breast cancer campaign. Now, nobody knew that this trip was happening, and it was the first time the former Prime Minister's Tony Blair's wife had allowed such TV access, and it changed attitudes towards breast cancer, which was a taboo subject in that country and also elsewhere. It really was significant. And while you're looking at this slide, you can see the BBC newsroom, which was actually designed on these around Star Trek. Really, it's like a spaceship flight deck. As you can see, all the desks merge in, and there's a cluster in the middle. So very interesting about our newsroom design. If we can go to the next slide. Now, being a scholar opened my eyes to the amazing world of Rotary. I was eventually invited to join Redbridge Rotary Club in London, and then went on to be elected as the first woman district governor of Rotary in London in what I would say was the best year for our capital. It was 2012, the year of the London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games. And I'll show you a little more in the next slide about what that involved. If we go to the next slide. So I was involved in organising Rotary's involvement with, sorry, back to the last one. I think there we are, that's great. I was involved in organising Rotary's involvement with the Games and was also a volunteer performer. And I encouraged the Rotarians to become performers and games makers during what was an amazing event in London. And here I am with Paralympic gold medalist Hannah Cropcroft. She's amazing. She got gold in Tokyo recently as well. If you change the slide on, we had an amazing Rotary Olympic boat trip on the River Thames with 300 people on board. And that was with entertainers, including a singer, Anne Marie. Now, you may or may not have heard of her, but this photo was taken before she became very, very famous. And she went to #1 in the chart singing Rockabye with the band Clean Bandits. She's done lots of more hit singles since then. So if you can change the slide again. I also had the inspirational opportunity as district governor to link with the district governor in the Mumbai district to send a vocational training team from London to stop mothers and babies dying in childbirth in India. That was through a global grant from the Rotary Foundation. And here are some of the nurses in the poor rural tribal area of Jawa. And that was where our successful project was based. And they were being trained by some of our medical team. And one thing that really struck me while I was out there, I went obviously to see the project in action. And on one day we'd expected, we didn't know how many people would turn up, just, a few people we thought. And actually 136 village health workers, which are called ASHAs, turned up for our session we were doing in Jawa. Some of them are really, they spent 3 hours getting there and walking in flip-flops. I mean, it was just amazing. And though I couldn't speak their language, and many of them didn't speak English, they were just so grateful. And, we were signing to each other and saying namaste. And it was just an amazing experience, really showing you the power of Rotary. Go on to the next slide. And then something incredible happened that I had never dreamt of when I was a Rotary ambassadorial scholar. I was elected as president of Rotary International in Great Britain and Ireland, and this was such an honor. If you go to the next slide, please. The year kicked off in style on the Dixie Queen, a boat on the River Thames with Rotarians, Rotaractors and others, including a sparkling amount of celebrities on board. And that was for the launch of Rotary's Purple for Polio campaign to end polio now. And even, as you can see, Tower Bridge was lit up purple on the night. So I've got a little video now to show you about that event. So if you could play the video, please, Phil.
I'm just mad about saffron. Saffron's mad about me. I'm part of this Polio Purple campaign on this Dixie Queen on the River Thames because I had polio myself when I was a babe in Glasgow, a wee kid in Glasgow. Quite right, yeah. They call me Mellow.
The Purple for Polio campaign is important because we really are on the edge of an historic milestone, because hopefully we may see the end of polio in 2019. That's what the Global Polio Eradication Initiative is saying, and that's thanks to the dedication and determination of Rotarians across the world who've led this campaign to have a polio-free world. What we need to do is keep raising awareness and also fundraising. It looks like we need about $1.5 billion to finish off the job.
I do actually remember when the news came through that India was polio-free, and it felt like such an amazing milestone, just because I'd been there and I'd done some work out there with Rotary, that, you know, imagine if that extended to the whole world being polio-free. That would just be such an amazing achievement.
When a child is immunised against polio, the little finger is painted with a purple dye to show that they've had the polio vaccinations and immunisations. So that's why we've got the colour purple.
Quite right, yeah. They call me Mellow Yellow.
Yeah, Donovan singing and finishing off that video. So a little more about the Purple for Polio campaign to end polio now and why it's so important. Rotary started and has spearheaded the campaign to eradicate polio since 1985, when there were 1,000 cases a day in 125 countries. In the video, we didn't actually see, it was mentioned about the last case in 2019. We didn't actually see it in 2019, but thanks to Rotary working with our partners in the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, there have been just 2 cases of wild polio virus globally, one in Pakistan and one in Afghanistan this year. And that's been since January this year. So, you know, since January the 27th. Now, leading on from that, I mean, it shows that we now need to finish the job, and Rotarians are actively involved in making this happen. As president of Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland, I travelled with British Rotarians to take part in a national immunisation day in India. And here we are walking through the slums of Delhi, making sure that no child was missed. So if you can change the slide. This was a vast operation, giving polio drops to 172 million children under the age of 5 in one go. That's astonishing. Our campaign to eradicate polio is just one of the many ways that Rotary is changing our world for the better. And if you can move on to our next slide. Our polio campaign is also helping in the fight against COVID-19. And here is one of my favorite slides, if you like. As you can see, polio workers have been coordinating outbreak response, educating communities on prevention, investigating cases, training health workers, and tracing contacts. There are also plans to use the infrastructure for polio to help get everyone vaccinated against COVID around the world, and coordinate the rollout to have the impact to reach remote parts of the world. And you'll be hearing a bit more about our polio campaign later on today. So you'll find out more about that then. And I could talk all day about the power of Rotary, but you can breathe a sigh of relief because I won't do that. Instead, I'm going to ask Phil to play a video that I produced, and it will tell you more about Rotary in just over 2 minutes.
One of the incredible things about Rotary is knowing that there are people across the world who you can connect with. For me, that's just given me a sense of power and belonging. So I know that I belong anywhere. And I know that I've got Rotary friends everywhere. Knowing that you've got a global reach of people who are like-minded, that's the wow factor.
Rotary is one of the most powerful international organisations that a young person can be involved in. It's one of the world's largest humanitarian organisations, has a membership of around 1.2 million members. It's located in over 200 countries and geographical regions. Pretty much any country you can think of, there'll be a Rotary Club there doing work in the local community, as well as connecting to each other across the globe, working together to make the world itself much better.
As Rotarians, being able to do things like start projects that have global impact. And I always talk to people about End Polio Now, because we wouldn't be where we are today in terms of polio in this world without Rotarians starting a project. For me, that's the power in everything that we do.
You have this incredible organisation, this incredible network at your disposal where you can learn from, engage with, run things through the organisation. Rotary has 7 focus areas where it focuses its energy and its time. Those key areas are disease, prevention and treatment, peace and conflict resolution, water and sanitation, maternal and child health, basic education and literacy, and economic and community development. And then this year, a new key area was added, which is the environment.
Rotary has changed my life because it's enabled me to help more communities and more people. Rotary is relevant in our own backyards and it's relevant right across the world. I think the way that we're working now as Rotarians and Rotary clubs is really changing, not just because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but because we're really thinking more about how we bring people into Rotary and let people know that Rotary is for them. It's a great way, first of all, to meet people, but also to do good work in your community. It doesn't matter who you are, if you have got a heart and mind for giving and helping communities and working with people, yes, Rotary is for you. That's what Rotary is, so yes, it's for everybody.
So as Rotary Global Scholars, you are now part of an amazing, inspirational organisation. Enjoy your time ahead and, like me, think about becoming a Rotarian or a Rotaractor in the future. It's the best decision I've made in my life. That's along with getting married, of course, but I did meet my husband through Rotary. You won't regret it. And Rotary really is, as was said in that video, the most powerful humanitarian organisation in the world. We not only change and save lives, but in doing so, change our own lives for the better as well. Because as Rotary's vision statement says, together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities and in ourselves. So thank you very much for listening. And I'm now very happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Eve. That was absolutely awe-inspiring, as absolutely usual from you. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A and we'll pick those up with John later on.
What I'd like to suggest, if I may, is if anyone has questions, can you use the reactions button and put your hand up so that we will not miss you? That just brings up a signal to us that you'd like to ask a question.
But I have to also say, while you're waiting for the questions, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes you have TV broadcasts when you've probably seen them where everything goes wrong. You know, they try and go to the first news story, it's not there. They try to go to the second one, it's not there. They try to go to the third one, it's not there. But that's where you have to start ad-libbing quite a bit. So it's just like the old days, really. But has anyone got a question?
As I was saying, if anyone has a question for Eve, thank you.
Oh, I can see Rachel.
Rachel, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Yeah, I was wondering, Eve, if you could tell us about your most memorable broadcast.
Oh, my most memorable broadcast. I think probably I think the broadcasts I've done about young citizens are probably the most memorable because they combine Rotary and what we do to help young people, and also my skills as a journalist. And, you know, we have a lot of, the reason the Young Citizen Awards were started, I was having a chat with my boss at the BBC News, and we'd been getting a lot of complaints from young people that the news is always, and it's the same now, isn't it? The news is always dominated by bad news stories about young people, involved in killing each other, antisocial behavior. And my boss actually at BBC News, he'd been on a RILA, which is a Rotary Youth Leadership Award program. I don't know if they have them where you are, but he knew about Rotary. And so we were having a meeting, and we were chatting, and I said, well, we should do something about this, really. And so the Rotary Young Citizen Awards were born. And I have to tell you that the positive news stories about young people in the Young Citizen Awards received far more coverage and from the public, the good news stories, than the bad stories. A couple of years ago, we had one young girl. She's actually got terminal cancer. She's lost all her hair. She's about 14. She's not going to live very long, but she's amazing. And she was interviewed live on the BBC News. And then the presenter, Simon McCoy, was they were both in tears, actually. And what happened, he put it on Twitter, and it had over 18,000 views in the first day. Because
amazing story.
It was amazing.
Amazing story. We have a question from Ryan. If you'd like to unmute yourself first, Ryan.
Sure. Yeah, Eve, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I was actually a journalist for a little while in Indonesia, so I definitely understand the career a bit, but I do want to hear a little bit more about your experiences with documentaries. I thought that was such a fascinating area of your interests, and I don't know, are you still engaged in making those through Rotary?
I've made several, actually. I've made 2 documentaries about one Young Citizen Award winner who had been left blind, unable to walk, unable to hear through spinal cancer. Yet she went on. I mean, she was amazing. She sadly, she died just after her 21st birthday. But she wrote 2 books. She abseiled down the side of the hospital that was treating her. She went out sort of lecturing to young kids that were involved in trouble and said, look, I can't see, I can't hear, I can't walk, but I'm doing all this. So you should be doing something positive too. So that was, I did 2 documentaries, one when she was alive, and then about her legacy, sadly, when she died. I've done documentaries about young people who've got behavioural issues, and obviously Rotary, that came through Rotary as well. I did 3, the hottest classroom on earth, the coldest classroom on earth, and the highest classroom on earth. And that was how taking young people who were had lots of behavioural issues on an extreme expedition with the support of teachers and mentors and actually celebrities. They managed to change their lives. That was another one. And obviously with the first one that came through Rotary as well, about fighting breast cancer in Pakistan. That was, as I say, that was with Fiona Bruce, who's a very well-known TV presenter. And it really did, change attitudes, because at the time in Pakistan, 50% of the women who were told they had breast cancer never went for treatment because of all the stigma and taboos surrounding breast cancer and even cancer. You couldn't talk about cancer. So what happened there is, after that documentary went out, and I was really proud that it made a difference, because it did change attitudes. And because it was shown worldwide, it made a difference in other countries as well, particularly Muslim countries where, as I say, breast cancer and cancer is very, very, very taboo. And we even had, when we interviewed the health minister in Pakistan, he said the words breast cancer for the first time. They would never talk about it. So, that's the power of documentaries. It's really, I think, you want to feel you can do something in your life, don't you? And actually, by doing documentaries that make changes in the world, that is so important. And I think all of you, you want to do that as well. And as scholars, You will go out there and change the world from what you are going to be doing here in Britain, and some of you maybe in Ireland this coming year. You are going to go back and make a difference.
Thank you, Eve. That's excellent. I think we need to leave the questions now, if I may. If you have further questions, please put them in the chat box and I'll do my best to answer them, or I'll pass them on to Eve to answer them at a later stage. We do have a general question and answer session after the next speaker, and I'll maybe if Eve can stay with us for a while, she may be able to answer one or two of the questions then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adrian, do you want to introduce our next speaker then?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you very much indeed to Eve. I've heard some of those stories before. I'm sure I'm going to hear a lot more of them again. They're always absolutely amazing. Our next speaker is Ray Dixon, and Ray is going to explain to us more about how the Rotary Foundation works. Ray, it's all over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Adrian. Presumably you can run the PowerPoint.
I think Phil's going to try and bring it up.
I say if not, I can share my screen.
Yeah, it's all right. No, he's done it. Phil's done it.
Okay, well, thanks. Welcome, everybody. Really great to see you here. And a special thanks to Eve for test running all the IT side of this. Hopefully now run smoothly. I want to talk about Rotary Foundation. The Rotary Foundation is a Rotary charity. It's something you'll be familiar with anyway, because obviously as global scholars, that is in fact why you're here. You've benefited from the foundation, and I'll explain basically the sort of background behind it. Next slide, please. The first one always takes us time to move on for some peculiar reason. Okay, this is our founder, Paul Harris. I'm starting at the very beginning, really, because it's an interesting journey in terms of how we've got to where we are at the moment. Paul was born in Iowa. He had a difficult childhood. Him and his sister were shipped off to Vermont at a very early age to be looked after by their grandparents. He didn't do well at school. He was, in fact, thrown out of school. In fact, subsequently thrown out of university. We don't know why he was thrown out of school, but we do know why he was thrown out of university. He belonged to apparently a subversive organisation, which we suspect may have been the forerunner of Rotary, but enough about that. But the concept of Rotary, next slide please, is when it was set up, it was Paul and 3 of his colleagues. And these colleagues were either friends or working colleagues. And that formed the basis of Rotary, because what they were, it was the foundation of fellowship and business networking. And this was the basis of what Rotary was started on. Incidentally, it was called Rotary because they met in rotation in one another's offices. Next slide, please. Now, this all changed in 1907 because working in Chicago, they built the first public conveniences. There were men's and women's toilets. And of course, this was a project which was much needed because in those days, if you needed the facilities, you had no choice other than really to go back home again, which was not particularly good for local businessmen. So in some respects, it's a bit self-serving, but it's interesting that today, water and sanitation and provision of toilets is still one of our primary areas of focus. So, but this changed us because going from a fellowship and business networking organisation, we changed to a community service organisation. And we are now still the biggest worldwide community service organisation, voluntary community service organisation. Next slide, please. Now, at a Rotary convention in 1917, Arch Clump donated $26.50. That would translate in today's money to about $400. And that formed the basis of our foundation. And that has grown to well in excess of $1 billion today. And this is really where we come into foundation. And you can see we've gone from fellowship and business networking to a community service organisation, and now an ability to, through our foundation, to support all sorts of massive programs. Next slide, please. Now we have a slight problem, because if you look at almost any other charity, their name always seems to clarify exactly who and what they are and what they do. We have a problem because we've got a pretty broad base in terms of what we're about. And this ability to provide a very simplistic mission statement has really eluded us for a great many years. This was revised just a couple of years ago. But even now, to me, it's a bit wordy and it doesn't really grab you as sort of a thing. You think, oh, I immediately understand. But basically, as you saw in that first slide, we've got a motto of just basically doing good in the world. And that's really what we're all about. Next slide, please. Now, Eve actually mentioned this in her presentation, that what we found is very easy to support all sorts of charities and good causes. The problem is you can spread yourself too thin. And what we've decided to do is to actually focus on specific areas. So what we've got are 7 areas of focus. And of course, you'll be fully familiar with this because every one of you are in fact studying related specifically to one of these areas of focus. It's a pre-requirement to actually be a global scholar. She mentioned environment being a new area of focus this year. Yes, it's new, but it's been incorporated in the other areas for a good many years. And it was a prerequisite of actually going for a grant, that it had an environmental element. But now we can actually raise, classic, hang on. Sorry about that, inevitable. But as I say, the environment was always incorporated in the other areas, but now you can actually get a grant specifically in relation to the environment. And that's quite exciting because these are very large grants, as I will explain in a minute. But I won't read out all the areas, but again, I say you'll all be familiar with these because that's where you're studying. Next slide, please. Now, those areas of focus almost replicated with UN sustainability goals, and that's no accident, actually, because we were very much part of setting up the United Nations. And you can see their sustainable goals are almost exactly the same as our areas of focus. And in fact, coincidentally, we still have a seat with the United Nations. So that gives us quite a good, strong and powerful voice. Next slide, please. So you can see very quickly, the top left is the donations we make into the annual. It comes back into the annual fund, and it's split between that blue and buff coloured box for the district grants and the global grants, which are the 2 at the bottom. And the global grants, of course, is where you sit in terms of global scholars. Separately, you've got the endowment fund, that's a green box on the bottom right, which is the fund that Arch Clump started. And this is continually supported with major gifts and bequests. And that money sits there permanently, generating further income, supporting the World Fund, helping grants. But more specifically, it totally funds our Peace Fellows, which is an amazing program in its own right. Similar to what you're doing, but totally focused on peace. And we're very fortunate in this country to have a peace university in Bradford. Next slide, please. So when it comes down to these global grants, these are the sort of programs we support. Now, polio, so I didn't go through that on the previous slide, but any donation that's made to polio goes directly to the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. So that money is not held in any way, it transfers straight into that fund. There is a slight slippage because we have a calendar year runs from July to June, whereas obviously the Polio Eradication Initiative runs from January to December. But effectively that money goes straight in, obviously vaccinating children across the world and supporting the various health workers actually carrying out these programs. The district grants I mentioned, that's some of the money will go to those, and they tend to be smaller projects within my own district. We put $1,000 cap on it. So basically a club will put in $1,000, we'll match it with $1,000. and they can do projects both home and overseas. The global grants are obviously the big ones, and they relate specifically to projects, global scholars, i.e. yourselves, or vocational training teams. These are teams of professionals that will go, they have to go overseas, they can be coming in. It goes both ways, but the teams will actually go and take their skills and train people, basically training trainers to propagate that sort of learning down through the local communities. And separately, as I mentioned, the Peace Fellows. So the global scholars there, yourselves, obviously you benefit directly from a global grant. So what is a global grant? So next slide, please. Oh, we are struggling.
No.
Okay, well, a global grant requires, it's a minimum of $30,000. So basically, this can be made up with contributions either from the Rotary Club, from a number of Rotary clubs, from the Rotary district, or a number of Rotary districts. But it has to have a host and international partner. Now, you'll be familiar with this because you've come effectively from the international partner, the Rotary Club that has sponsored you to come through to this country. And the host club is the club here that you've been assigned to actually work with you while you're in this country. So they're the two elements. Now, the great thing about it is you don't need to have money from specific areas. It can be made up in any of those. So as I said, contributions from clubs, districts, matches from the World Fund, they all go together to make up, oh, here we are. You can see that on the left-hand side there, that's money put in by the host or international clubs. There is the bit in the middle, which is the districts putting in money from their so-called district designated fund. That's the money they got back from the World Fund, the annual fund. And then the World Fund match, which is put into it. And any combination of that makes up $30,000 or more will qualify. So that's really how your grant has come together. What you'll tend to find with the majority of you is that almost exclusively the money comes from the international district designated fund with a match from the World Fund. But there are other exceptions to that. Next slide, please. So as you can see, there's a whole range of projects which are undertaken through the global grants and the foundation, both in the areas of education, water and sanitation. There's a VTT on the bottom right-hand side there in terms of maternal health, and the projects on the top right there is providing ambulances for third world countries, obviously where there's little in the way of roads, where these motorbike ambulances have proved invaluable. The next slide, please. That gives you a basic overview. And again, hopefully you understand, basically your part within the foundation now and how you've benefited. And I'll be happy to take any questions from the session that follows. Thank you.
Okay,
so as we did before, if people would like, who's got questions for Ray, shall we start sticking just with questions for Ray for now, and then maybe we can move back to a few questions for Eve if anyone has any later. So are there questions for Ray? Put your hands up if you will, please, using the reaction button.
I think it's a great part of a presentation when you get to this stage and there's no questions and you think, I've really either explained it so clearly or everybody is just totally confused.
Sleep. Okay, so I see the time is 11:15. I think we're back up to our numbers in the main room. So thank you all very much indeed for that. I hope there was some good conversation going on there. I hope we've had a chance to meet a few more of your colleagues and everything else. We certainly had some good input into our session. I'm now going to call on Amanda. Amanda is the General Secretary of Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland. and she is going to talk to us about RGBI and Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland. So Amanda, it's all over to you.
Thank you very much, Adrian, and good morning to everybody. It's wonderful to see so many bright faces here today, and I know you're all from so many different parts of the world as well, and I think that internationality aspect of Rotary is its real jewel in the crown, that we get to meet different people, share different cultures. The diverse mix is something that I'm so excited about when I think about Rotary and all that it brings to our communities, its members, and the participants like yourselves that we connect with on on such a regular basis. So thanks very much, Adrian, for giving me the opportunity to come and speak with you all today. Rotary International in Great Britain and Ireland is in a really unique position currently. There may be some changes, we won't go into that story today, but at the moment we are able to look after our own destiny to a large extent. We have our own constitution and bylaws, and the way in which we operate supports and reflects the values and the infrastructure of Rotary on an international basis. So I'm sort of very honoured and fortunate to have the position of General Secretary, looking after the support centre team that support our members and districts here in Great Britain and Ireland. So I've got a presentation slideshow just to take you through to give a bit of clarity and to get you off of just a single face as the visual impact. So I'm just going to share my screen now and bring that up. So hopefully you're all able to see that screen at this moment in time. So for me, being sort of able to lead the support centre team in the role of General Secretary is something that actually intrinsically means a lot to me. So I've been a member of Rotary since 2002 and served as a district governor back in 2010-11. So I've sort of sat on the volunteer side of Rotary for a significant amount of years now. So to have come in, and I'm actually, 1st of October was my 8th anniversary of being in this job. And yeah, there's a lot's happened during those 8 years. But it isn't all about me, quite bluntly. You know, I don't do this in a standalone position. And the point is that we've got 40,000 members out there across Great Britain and Ireland that deliver Rotary. They're the ones that make Rotary have an impact. They're the people that are people of action. I'm one of those 40,000 members. I volunteer within my own Rotary club here in Redditch, but we have 1,670 clubs. So that's lots of individual groups that are all out there, and each one of you will be associated with certainly a club here in Great Britain and Ireland, but importantly, the club that put you forward to bring you onto this programme in the first instance. And we're broken down into 25 regions. So all of those 1,600 clubs are supported at the local level. And so you can see on the map there that we've got Scotland. There are 3 regions in Scotland. We have Ireland, the whole of Ireland, so that's the Republic and Northern Ireland, is one Rotary district. And that's something, again, that Rotary is very proud of, in that it has transcended the differences that have occurred during the and I'd like you to meet them. You can't meet them all individually, but here's the motley crew, and they're great. And they're sort of split down into various areas. So the pink section on the left-hand side, that is our Rotary Foundation of the United Kingdom and finance. So they look after all the money and donations and make sure that there's a gift aid accredited to the donations where applicable. In the sort of turquoisey section is our communications team, and this is where we've just onboarded 2 new members, George and Ola, have come in to work with James and Martin. The blue section, that is our governance team, and we look after all of the leaders of the association. So there's a lot of work that goes on there, but importantly, and probably most importantly, they also look after membership and the direct membership aspect of Rotary. So a nice big team there. And then the yellow section to the right-hand side, that's our club and district support team. And they're dealing with the day-to-day challenges that our members find in their club settings. And that could be anything from renaming a club, starting a new one, merging something, wanting to know a little bit more about the technicalities of doing something, insurance or compliance and those sorts of things. So there's a full team there delivering services on a Monday to Friday, generally Monday to Friday basis, although when we've got events and activities on, then we also flow into weekend work and evening work as well. So great team, all really enthusiastic and highly experienced. Obviously new members just coming in to gain that experience, but we've got people there that have been with us for over 20 years. Average, I would say people have been with us for 6 or 7 years. So I think as an employer, hopefully it indicates that we're doing something right to encourage people to stay with us, to grow and to learn Rotary and to be a part of its future. So the team itself is, I guess, trying to live out the values and live out the way in which Rotary itself is adapting. And so we're looking at making sure that we have good team development, keeping everybody together, that we have a culture of continuous improvement, and importantly, that we become and remain as an agile organisation. And what that means for us is adapting to the changing world that volunteering and community activity is facing. You know, there are a lot of other organisations, a lot of other ways that people can volunteer their time. And so we're looking at what is the difference between us and others, and how do we partner with others that are out there, rather than going into being a competing environment, actually becoming a complementary environment and offering that little bit something special, that little bit something extra or underpinning in different ways. So we make sure that we're thinking as a customer in the services that we deliver, analysing and determining what adds value, making sure we're using real examples. So finding out from our members, who are in effect are our customers, you know, what are they doing? What do they seek to achieve? Making sure we avoid waste, and that's across all ways of thinking there. So the planet is important to us as well. So making sure that we aren't wasting resources, but equally aren't wasting time and aren't wasting money as well. Seeing the whole picture, making sure that we, as I say, have stimulate collaboratively, and have that continuous improvement and understand what we can do. There's no point in setting expectations that are unrealistic and failing at every hurdle. We want to make sure that we go, yeah, this is achievable. If we do X, Y, Z, we can get to the place where we need to be. So we're adapting, and importantly, we make sure that we're serving the needs of our members across these 3 key areas that I've already spoken to you about when you saw the team itself. So club support and governance, making sure we're doing things effectively, making sure that we're working within the law, and ensuring that our members understand how to deliver Rotary service in a safe and effective way. So making sure that health and safety is uppermost in their minds, that they do risk assessments, all the things that are a little bit tedious, but actually are fundamental to making sure that our service delivery is impactful and does what it needs to do. We need to make sure that we get out there and sell the story of Rotary, and we have good communications. And of course, the jewel in Rotary's crown is the Rotary Foundation, and you guys are here because of the Rotary Foundation. And so that's something that we want to make sure stays high and proud on the radar of our members. So Rotary itself has an international strategic action plan. It has 4 priorities within that plan, and all of our objectives are built around those 4 priorities. So we want to make sure that we increase our impact. So that means helping with the projects, not physically doing them, but making sure that the resources that our members need are available to them. And that impact is also across things such as End Polio Now and the polio eradication campaign. So again, reinforcing that. And of course, this month we will see World Polio Day coming forward. Expanding our reach to actually connect with more people and hopefully entice people to become members of Rotary and actually get involved in this amazing global network. Enhancing participant engagement. You know, there's nothing worse than joining something and then finding that you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs. So making sure that we're connecting with each of those members, making sure that they feel that they've got a place and a purpose within the organisation to whatever extent is right for them. We've got people here today that are Rotarians, the likes of Phil and Adrian, John, and many others, and Eve, etc., that have given an awful lot of their own spare time to Rotary. Other people aren't always in a position to do that. That doesn't matter. Every little bit counts, and if you are able to do more, then the leadership and development opportunities are available to you within Rotary. And of course, the 4th priority, as always, increasing our ability to adapt, to make sure that we stay agile, that we stay on top of the trends of society, and that we actually respond and deliver what's needed. So that's, I guess, as much as I kind of want to say about the support centre and what we do. But of course, what's really important is that the programmes that sit behind this, the things that matter to you all as individuals and to many thousands of others as well. You know, Rotary is there to unlock potential and to develop skills and broaden horizons for people. And that happens through a variety of programmes that we deliver that are standard within our curriculum, if you like, for Rotary service. So New Generation Service Exchange, that's an opportunity to go overseas and actually get involved in a project, to do something practical, to apply your skill and your talent to help others. That could be environmental, it could be something which is maybe born around education, but whatever it is, it will be focused on one of our 7 areas of focus. Youth exchange, unfortunately, currently on hold because of the travel restrictions, but a great opportunity for younger people to be able to travel to a new country, be that somewhere else in Europe or overseas to America, or even out to one of the Asian countries. It doesn't matter where it is in the world. That youth exchange program is alive and kicking. It's just currently on hold whilst we get the COVID travel restrictions back under control. We also are fortunate here in Great Britain and Ireland to have an accredited leadership and management programme. So this is a certificated, level 2 certificated programme that we can take young people on a journey to receive at the end of it certification to show that their leadership and management is transferable, that they may be doing something in a voluntary capacity, but actually they're able to lift that up and take it into the workplace potentially, or into setting themselves aside from their peers if they're going into university and trying to get interviews to get into those settings as well. We have our youth competitions and a technology tournament and Rotary Youth Leadership Awards. Both of these really productive programmes, many people taking part on an annual basis. Rotary Young Citizens Award, and I know Eve Conway's with you today, and Eve brought these award programmes to us, and on an annual basis this is something that gives us tremendous satisfaction, not only in identifying young members of society that are doing that extraordinary thing in their life, but actually to get that broadcast. So the BBC picks up on these stories and actually promotes what these young people are doing, helps them with their community interest companies or their charities that are setting up. And of course, a byproduct is that Rotary gets promoted as well. And then lastly, but something which has been with us for some significant time, is Rotary Kids, Interact and Rotaract. And these are our younger people's programs. So you become a member of Rotary Kids if you're aged 7 to 12, or if you're 12 to 18, then you go into Interact, or 18 forward, usually to around about sort of late 20s is Rotaract. And I think you've already got somebody speaking to you about that, so I won't go into that in too much detail. But these programs are opportunities for people like yourselves to get involved, or bring your colleagues, your peers, your friends, your family into the world of Rotary via these really sort of, I feel anyway, important and exciting programs for everybody to enjoy. So Rotaract is the thing, I guess, that's for the majority of you going to be within your age range, and it is something where you can have some fun, develop your leadership, and you can actually bring forward your own ideas into projects to solve the problems of the world. So Rotaract is something that I would definitely recommend you look up and see if it's right for you, even whilst you're doing your studies here. So other things that Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland brings together is we have a series called Together Talks, and we've run 4 series of Together Talks. And if you hop onto our YouTube channel, you'll be able to pick up the back copies of this. But basically, we're bringing people together who have an interest that resonates with something that Rotary might be involved in. So if we're looking here, this particular example, this was from field to fork and looking about where our food comes from. Well, environmental sustainability is something that is absolutely at the heart of Rotary, with its 7th area of focus having been launched in July. So we want to make sure that we're not missing out on hearing from others outside of Rotary and bringing their skill and experience and knowledge into the world of Rotary, and then we can broadcast that out. We live stream. Phil Dyer, who's with us today, has been instrumental in making sure that the technical aspects of this come together for us, and it's been a highly successful series, and we'll be picking up and continuing to run this in due course. And the people that we meet, of course, a lot of them come through our partnership relationships that we have. And here in Great Britain and Ireland, we try to extend, that sort of expanding our reach element is to connect with others across the voluntary and community sector. So we have relationships with Carers UK. So these are unpaid carers supporting their families or friends or others within the community. Shelterbox, which many of you may well already be aware of, which is providing a shelter in times of disaster, be that natural or man-made. Mercy Ships, massive organisation out there from a healthcare perspective, delivering support and services, taking literally a new ship has just been put together, and the Rotary Foundation has awarded a $1 million grant to support the development of that new ship going out and delivering services in those areas that would be struggling otherwise. We also have relationships in the areas of social enterprise and conscious capitalism. There's nothing wrong with making money. It's about how you make that money and who you affect along that pathway. So we're working with an organisation called Unlimited that seeks to educate and support young social entrepreneurs in their endeavours to really step into the world of business, but with a social conscience. National Citizenship Service, this is a youth programme been brought together by our government, and Rotary is intrinsically involved in this as well. So we've got lots of outreach into different sectors of society where things are taking place. We have a relationship with the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme through our Interact programme as well. So we've tried to extend and expose others to the world of Rotary whilst exposing Rotary to the world of others. So it's a real win-win and a two-way street for us. So last on this list is a national event called Volunteer Expo, and this was due to launch in May 2020, and COVID got in the way a little bit, as you might all imagine. And so what we have done though is we went into a virtual world for 2021, which was very successful, but let's be truthful, there's nothing like a live event, and it's trying to get back to that live setting of bringing people together. And we've partnered up with the National Council for Voluntary Organisations, because Rotary is bringing this particular opportunity together to support the whole of the voluntary and community sector. So Rotary is the facilitator, the host of this event, and you can see that we're going live in May 2022 at the NEC, the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham. And of course, if you guys are still on our soil at that time, we'd be delighted if you'd want to come and join us as well. It's free to attend. Obviously, you need to get yourselves there, but maybe if you have a word with your local Rotary, they'll give you that support as well in coming along. So just to share a little bit, here's a quick intro video as to what it's all about. So Volunteer Expo is the largest event that Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland brings together, and it really is an experience I believe that will benefit so many people. We have an exhibition centre, so lots of different exhibitors, large organisations, small organisations, really diverse. And we're trying to bring in also some of the Black and minority ethnic groups into this exhibition area as well, because actually they're not given the showground that they deserve. So we're actually working with some of our colleagues across the sector to ensure that we lift the bar on this a little bit higher. There's face-to-face networking, speakers and workshops, so some real sort of deep dive topic areas to get involved in. And of course, as you might expect, there's a Rotary Action Summit within this as well. So this is the bit about, you've heard what it's all about, you've heard how you might do it, now let's get on and do something. So that take action part is really important also. So save the date, if you would, 6th to the 7th of May, 2022. So finally, the area that I'd like to speak to you about is a new development for Rotary here in Great Britain and Ireland, and something that we're modelling on behalf of our colleagues in Evanston, Chicago as well, so where our world headquarters is situated. And we have a direct membership model where people can join Rotary as opposed to joining the Rotary Club of wherever. And the idea here is that people can get to understand Rotary, get to know what resonates for them, give them an introduction and an exploration of what Rotary is all about, and then in their own time go and find a Rotary club that might suit them. Of course, for some people, they may never go and find a club. They may just continue to work through the Rotary Global Hub, as we call it. But we really do connect people across the territory here. We have international connections as well. We have people that are joining us from overseas into this new direct membership model. And the interactivity is focused through our Microsoft Teams site. So people come in for lots of different channels within the Teams area where people can get involved in the area of interest that works for them. Lots of conversation, lots of interactivity. And of course, Teams gives us the ability to instantly chat with each other and of course have video call as well. So we can really start to connect and build relationships. So the Rotary Global Hub, if you fancy joining Rotary once you've finished your studies, or even before if you wish, then you'd be very welcome to come and join us here in Rotary Great Britain and Ireland, or of course get involved with your local Rotary Club out in your home countries. So Adrian, thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity to speak with you. That's all I've really have to share with you today, and I hope that that gives you a little bit of insight into what we're doing and how we do it.
Amanda, thank you very, very much indeed. And for everyone on the call, I'm sure they would all join me, particularly the Rotarians on the call. RGBI and the office at Ulster do such a fantastic job for all of us. Certainly, whenever I phone up there, I know to me it's a problem, but to them, they will just say, yeah, we can deal with that. And it's all just dealt with and the problems all go away. They really are a truly amazing bunch of people. And Amanda, thank you so much indeed for that. It was really amazing. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. And if it's okay by you, I'm going to leave you. I'm actually still on my annual leave, to be honest with you. So I'm going to go off now, and I've got some family stuff planned. So thank you so much. And I wish you all a great success over the coming year. So thank you. And yeah, have a great rest of the day.
If any of you have any questions about this session, obviously Amanda is on holiday, as she said. Let her get away and go back to her lovely barbecue in the rain. I'm sure she'll enjoy that. Please do go and enjoy your PTO. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat room, and we will publish Amanda's email address if that's all right with Amanda, and then you guys can reach out to her with questions. But please remember, she is a very, very busy lady. So Amanda, thank you very much. Go and enjoy your holiday.
Thank you so much. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.
So okay, that was absolutely fantastic. The next speaker has just arrived. So what I'm going to suggest is, Prakash, if you're listening, good morning to you. What I'm going to suggest, please, can we all take a 5-minute break now? And can we all come back at 1:45, so 11:45? I'd like to introduce you to Prakash. Prakash was like yourselves, he was a global scholar, and he came to a wonderful place called London. and he stayed here for a couple of years, and he's now gone back home to Canada, whereabouts I'm sure it's some ungodly hour of the morning. But one of the things he did do was he started either a Rotaract club or a Rotaract club here in London, purely for the scholars, and I'm going to let him talk to you about that and try and let you into that one. So Prakash, it's all over to you.
Thanks, Adrian, and I can confirm it is an ungodly hour in the morning here, but I'm happy to be here. And the reason why is that you're going to hear this a lot over the next few years, so I'll try to stay away from cliches as much as I can during this presentation. But I was in your shoes a few years ago, and time goes by, you know, just as quickly as people say it does. I remember being in a room somewhere in, I believe, South London. We were doing this in person, and that's where I met Adrian and a few other of the Rotarians on this call. And what I remember from that session mostly was just how I felt everyone was so accomplished around me. Doctors, lawyers, and going back to the theme of, you know, being in your shoes, I know that, you know, the term has just started. London has some amazing universities. You're surrounded by amazing peers. I just want to say, you know, you're here for a reason, and you were selected for the Rotary Global Grant for a reason. And the amazing things that you have done and will do are just, you know, they're a credit to the character that, you know, Rotary and Rotaract attracts. And so that's why I'm here today. I want to talk about a little bit about my Rotary journey, my Rotary Global Grant journey, but I mostly want to talk about Rotaract and how it played a role in my time in London. But first, a little bit about me. I am a policy advisor to the Minister of Government and Consumer Services here in Ontario. But my path, like Adrian mentioned, found its way through London during the last 2 years. And so I'm an MPA from the LSE. Prior to that, I worked in advertising. But my road to the global grants and to Rotary more generally came about as a result of a development project I worked on in Southeast Asia. And knowing the type of people that the global grant you know, attracts and is awarded to, I'm sure there are plenty of people on the call as well who have worked in development and you know, have a lot of great ideas and passion as to how to improve development practices, how to rally the troops, so to speak, and how to fundraise. And I think that if you have those 3 or 4 passions and maybe a couple more you know, attributes to boot, if you could bring that to the Rotaract Club, or if you bring that to Rotaract, you'll find yourself amongst similar company. But with that being said, I don't want to, like I said, rely on cliches in this short little presentation about what Rotaract is or what it could be, because the answer is it's really up to you, especially in London. And I won't mince words here. We have a little bit of a membership problem in London. There's about 5 clubs. As Adrian mentioned, the club, the Rotaract Club of London, was started last year, and 2 years ago. And there are 4 other clubs in the region. But membership is something that is a bit of a difficult cookie to crack. And so what I wanted to focus on in this presentation is appealing to the attributes and characters that brought you into this virtual room right now. It's a passion to help people. It's a passion to work together to do just that. And being a global grant scholar myself, I was dismayed that despite the conversations I had during my orientation session 2 years ago, only 2 global grant scholars actually joined Rotaract clubs within London, as far as I know. And so the Rotaract Club of London, it's slightly different than a Rotaract club for global grant scholars. It's a Rotaract club for anyone. And it was started not by just myself, but by myself and another global grant scholar a couple of years ago. And so knowing the type of people on this call, you see a whiteboard and you say, well, what could go on that whiteboard? And that's the path that we took with Rotaract. There's an amazing history of Rotaract. You know, you're learning about the history of Rotary today. But the reality is, when you're starting a club in, I suppose, a bit of a grassroots manner, you can really make it whatever you want. So just to give you a little bit of an example as to, you know, the direction we chose to take things in the first year. And, hopefully this acts as inspiration for your Rotaract journeys down the line, wherever those may be. We were new to London, and quite a few of our members were new to London as well. And living in central London, one of the things that we would see every day and that was impossible to ignore was the homeless situation and the rough sleeper situation. And so I would say that Rotaract, the elevator pitch sometimes can get a little bit, it's a big mandate, especially when you think about Rotary and the work that it's done and its membership and the 6 areas of focus and all that. It's very difficult sometimes to explain what exactly Rotary and Rotaract is. And Rotaract, it is Rotary in action is the idea. And so we wanted to take action on the homeless situation and do as much as we could to help. And so, despite the pandemic, you'll hear that probably a million times as well over the next few months. Where there's a will, there's a way. So our group came together. We were about 15, I believe, at the start. And over the course of time, that membership grew, and we were able to host online concerts, raise over $5,000 for charity for a crisis in London. And thanks to some of the Rotarians on this call, we were even able to bring in the past president of Rotary International, Holger Knack, to that call. And so I would say that in your Rotaract journey, if you're looking for inspiration as to how you can make a difference, sometimes you don't even have to leave the room. It could just be a conversation with the person next to you and finding out they have an amazing talent as a singer. And that's exactly, when we were starting up, what we discovered about a few of our members. And so I would say that, looking back at another part of my Rotary journey, when we all went down to Bournemouth for the district conference, which I'm not sure will take place in person this year, but I hope that if that opportunity does arise, you do take it. Seeing some of the skills and talents, and once again, just I guess stories from Rotaractors around the world, that ability in action is a very powerful force. And so perhaps I'll conclude this little part of this discussion with something that I kind of learned along the line whilst in London. And Rotary is really about, and that is that Rotary is really about reading in between the lines. So, jumping back a minute or two, and I was talking about what exactly is Rotary and what exactly is Rotaract, and how would you go about explaining it to someone on the street? Well, once you're in the Rotary and the Rotaract family and you're trying to figure out exactly what it is and what Rotary does and what they will do and what Rotaract will do, I would say just keep an open mind and read between the lines. Some of the best conversations I had with Rotarians, was over a glass of wine in a restaurant, and it was just hearing about the work that they had done, the work that they wanted to do, and thinking to myself, once again, there's an amazing opportunity as a global grant scholar, as a young person, as just a citizen who's concerned with these types of things, to look at the whiteboards that we all have in front of us and say, well, hey, if we work together, many hands make light work. And so perhaps I'll stop there for a moment or two. I'm not sure if folks on the call have had a chance to talk to any Rotaractors in town, maybe other global grant scholars within your network who have gone through similar experiences. But I'll finish off by saying that if you have any interest in joining a Rotaract club or learning more, I'll put my contact information in the chat. If you have any questions now, I'd be more than happy to answer those as well. And one of the things that I learned within the Rotary community here in London is that it's a massive city. There's 60 clubs, and there's a group of individuals who you will see, like Adrian and the co-hosts today, that do a lot of amazing work. So I would recommend reaching out to those folks if you have any questions about how you can get involved in say district level services, like the call that we're on right now. And I would say just this is an opportunity waiting to be taken. Like I started off this call, this is an amazing group of people, I remember the stories that were shared during the first couple orientation sessions, and I would encourage you to reach out to as many people on this call as possible. Grab a coffee, go on a Zoom call and just enjoy the fact that there are people like you who are now all found themselves in a very conveniently created group, and I'm very excited for you.
Okay, Prakash, thank you very much indeed for doing that. I'll let you go back to bed. John has put in the chat. We don't have time, unfortunately, because of Q&A now. But if you're happy for your email address to be published, we'll get it out to the scholars, and hopefully they can all come and join you on your virtual e-club. The time now comes where I'm going to give a small presentation. One of the jobs that I do in Rotary, concerned with the scholars, is that I'm the coordinator for London, and this is my second year in the job, and I've noticed that some scholars that they're either not told the full story of what's expected of them, or they've just forgotten it. So if I just reiterate some of the things that you might be familiar with this slide. It's a small picture from the grants area, and you've done the draft part, you've done the authorization part, you've been submitted, and at the moment, can I have the next slide, please, Phil? Thank you. And at this moment in time, you have been approved. So this is whereabouts your story is for the next year. So if we can move on, please, Phil. So one of the things you need to do at the end of your year is to do some reporting back to the Rotary Foundation. And it's all done up in the same area as when you go to the normal grant screens. One side says your grant number, and on the other side it says reports. So next slide, please. So when you go there, if you go into the main grant, you get this small screen coming up saying, are you ready to report? And with the blue button there about going to the report. There are two types of report. There's a progress report. So if your work isn't quite finished, then you should do a progress report. And you should do your first progress report on the first anniversary of your engagement. And you should carry on doing those progress reports until everything has been wrapped up. And at that time, you would then do a final report. So last slide, please, Phil. So one of the things you need to keep for your progress reports and for your final report is bank statements. So any money that's been given to you, any expenses you've had over $75, and including ledgers and anything else. And also the Rotary Club, who is your home Rotary Club, they should be keeping all these as well. And please do get onto them to make sure that they do keep them for you. One of the bugbears that I had last year was tracing down Rotary clubs and getting this information out of them to do the final reports for some of the scholars. So just a very, very quick thing. You need to do the reports. Please do put it into the back of your mind. Don't get too stressed about it. It's quite easy to do, but please make sure that you do get on with your reports when you get back home or at the end of your year. That's the end of my slides. Phil, thank you very much indeed. We're now going to move into John, and we're going to have another Q&A session. So John, it's all over to you.
Thank you, Phil. So as before, if anyone has questions, the best way to make sure we know you have a question is either to type it into chat, which I've been asking for already, but mainly now, while we've got a live Q&A session, question and answer session, just put your hand up, use the reactions button. Now remember, we've had presentations now since the last question and answer session from Amanda, Amanda Watkin was talking about Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland, how it's organised, what it aims to support us all in doing. And so if you have any questions about Amanda's area of work, about what our support centre does and how they support us as Rotarians, and of course you as scholars, please put your hands up there. And then we had the talk from Prakash about Rotaract. His background being a scholar in London, and then what he found about working with a small group and setting up Rotaract in London. And whether you have any questions about that, please put your hands up now and we can deal with those questions. I'm not seeing any. We've had a question from Molly. This looks like it's a question for Adrian actually. Molly's asking, Adrian, I'll probably ask you to answer this. Since I yet don't have a project bank account, as we're working on transferring the cheque to a new account, am I able to report retrospectively on costs before this is set up? Specifically costs for this month on my personal account, as long as I have financial documentation. So, you want to pick that one up, Adrian?
Well, yeah, I think any of us could really. So yeah, providing you keep all that documentation safe, then and you work with your home club so that they've got the same documentation as well, then you should be good to go.
Okay, I hope that answers it, Molly. If not, just do come back on that. Now, Nicholas has put his hand up. If you'd like to unmute yourself, Nicholas, and then ask away.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, and thank you to all the presenters for taking some time out to talk to us today. So I had a question directed, I think, to Adrian regarding the reporting process. So I believe it's clear, but I just want to double check now and not regret it later. So we will need to provide receipts or some sort of like, I guess, expense justification for anything in our grant that is over $75. So let's say like tuition or flights, or in the case of maybe COVID tests as well. But then let's say that we have a section of our grant that is for like food or like just living stipend, let's call it that way. So that'd be a series of purchases that would all be under $75. Is there a preferred method that we report that, or maybe a template? I just want to make sure that when the time comes, there won't be any sort of like confusion there. Let me know if that was clear. Thank you.
I'm not actually too sure on normal living and sort of running costs like that. John, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Normally, Rotary would request, as you said, Adrian, receipts for any expenses over the equivalent of $75. But Nicholas, if you've got other expenses, firstly, just make sure you've got a list of what they were and what they were for, how they relate to your scholarship. If you've got receipts for them, even if they're less than $75, it can only be good practice to keep them and submit them as well. There's no downside to doing so, and it just Rotary. Let me just go back a little step back. Rotarians are funding all of your scholarships. We don't want any particular praise or thanks for that. We're very pleased to do it. But at the beginning of the day, all the money comes from individual Rotarians. And one thing the Rotary Foundation is very keen to do is to make sure that all the money it gives out, whether it gives that money out to scholars, puts it into a project to dig a water well in Zambia, or help with schooling in the Philippines or whatever, Rotary is very keen to make sure the money is all spent really well. And that's why it's very hot on reporting and financial management. So if you can help us with that, that's the only reason that we're having a go about receipts and reports and so on. But it is important we do them, because and that's the very reason why. I hope that answers it, Nicholas. And,
yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, and yeah, totally agree. Just want to make sure that as transparent as possible. So thank you.
Thanks for your help with that. Molly's come up with Molly's come up with a question. Molly
Yeah,
O'Reilly.
I had a question, and I also wanted to comment on the question that Nicholas had asked. I just came from granting work myself. I worked in overseeing the work for a foundation on on reporting. So I just wanted to note, for those of us that have receipts, it's not enough just to keep them. You want to make sure you have a copy of them digitally, because unfortunately the ink of receipts of today's time, they'll disappear within a few months. So if you're keeping them all in a safe bag, also make sure you have a digital copy, because those will unfortunately deteriorate in a matter of months, and you'll be trying to figure out what these blank sheets had to do with your grant.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Molly. That sounds like very wise advice based on
I've seen it happen before, and
experience.
it's painful. It's painful when folks can't adequately report because we don't have the financial documentation. And then the question that I had was, I'm sure this will become apparent when we go onto the system, but in terms of reporting a currency, would we theoretically be reporting then in US dollars, even though we're functioning right now in GBP? Because I'm thinking, you know, each receipt, say it's whatever amount in GBP, would we want to have a budget that maybe had both?
Rotary does work on the basis of what it calls the official Rotary exchange rates. They change, they're reassessed every month.
Okay.
They are actually published on our website.
Okay.
And if you simply Google Rotary exchange rates, you'll find that it'll lead you through to a table of the exchange rates for whichever month you happen to incur the expenses, and then you can use the appropriate exchange rate to convert it to dollars for the reporting.
Got it. So we should be, I guess, checking in about that monthly then, so that we're reporting, say, for the month of September on the currency exchange of today, and then so we can't wait till the end and then check the currency exchange. We want to be doing it regularly for the
ideally, because exchange rates do move around. I mean, they haven't moved very much for the last 3 months, but
okay.
Ideally, yes, as frequently as you reasonably feel you can. But they are all available historically. If you need
okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna has a question.
Yes, just for quick clarification on the reporting. So for the 2 reports in the Grant Center, is the anniversary date, would we consider that the date when our grant was approved? I'm sorry if you said that and I missed it.
I think that's so. Is that right, Adrian?
Yes, I believe it is the date when it was actually approved, yes.
Okay,
okay. That is right.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
Good.
Okay,
so there are no other questions coming up there, Adrian, so I'll pass back to you and we can move on.
Okay, well, we're going to move straight into another breakout group now. So I hope Phil has got this all ready to go. So we're going to have another breakout group for another 15 minutes. And this one, we're going to call this one Drive on the Left. So things in the UK are slightly different, all depending whereabouts you've come from in the world. So just talk about what things have you found and how you're trying to cope with everything that you've had to walk into. So Phil, all over to you. Yep. Okay, then let's get on with it. So thank you very much for that. I hope it was I won't say useful, but I hope there was some useful conversation there. I'm now going to move on to someone called Keith, and Keith is going to talk to us about one of Rotary's flagship projects that started before I was in Rotary. It's an absolutely fantastic project, and I'm going to pass off to Keith and he can tell us all about Polio now.
Good morning, everybody. No, good afternoon, everybody, from a wet and miserable Manchester. If you could start my presentation, please, with my title slide. That's just so that you can know my credentials, really. I've had a few small jobs in Rotary since I was district governor in Centennial Year. Most recently, I was an Polio Now coordinator. My credentials for that is that I am a diagnostic virologist, epidemiologist. I worked in the public health, in the public sector in this country, but I also have lectured at 2 universities for over 40 years, part-time on master's courses on these sorts of subjects. And my involvement with polio goes back a long time because I was responsible in the northwest of England for following up all potential cases. There weren't any, but following potential cases. So if we can move on, please, to the first slide. Thank you. If you'd been living in almost any developed industrial nation in the years following the Second World War, images such as these would have been far too common. And as a child, it was quite probable that you would have been.
If she can get her script to us, either you or I could.
Hello, John.
Present on that topic.
And if you're a child, it's quite probable that you would have been in contact with somebody who might have been like this. And you might even have been infected yourself, but without any symptoms. In England and Wales, reporting of polio cases began in 1912, and between 1946 and 1960, there were almost 55,000 cases, which was about 1 in 1,000 children every year in that time. And it's easy for us to think that this was always the case, that there was always paralytic polio, but it's not true. There were cases recorded in antiquity. We've seen it on Egyptian stele, but polio in the paralytic form was very rare. Cases were sporadic, and it wasn't until the end of the 19th century that we started to see large-scale epidemics. First of all, in Western, or rich, developed industrial nations, and very strangely, in more affluent people. But from the 1950s onwards, we started to see cases throughout the world. Can we go on? Next, please. Lovely. Polio is caused by a small virus. It belongs to a group of viruses that can grow inside your intestines. It's so small that it would take 1.6 billion packed together to cover a pinhead. The genome is only 7,500 nucleotides long, which means it codes for 11 genes, of which only 4 are present on the outside of the virus. Now, the comparison is the human genome, which is made up of 6.4 billion nucleotides and codes for between 20 and 25,000 different proteins. You become infected through your mouth if you ingest contaminated material, and the virus will start to grow in your throat and then in your upper small intestine, as you can see in the diagram. And from there, it can get into your bloodstream and it can go to the central nervous system, where it can grow in those cells lining your spinal cord and around your brain, which are called the meninges, but also in your spinal cord itself, in motor neurons. And the big red arrow is what highlights that. Next. A lot of people will say, I've heard it said, that polio transmission is mainly via contaminated food and water. And that provision of clean water supplies and proper sanitation might be the best way and the most effective way of eliminating the disease. It's not true. Water and sanitation projects are important in eliminating many diseases, but polio is mainly transmitted from person to person through close contact. And the nice little series of images at the bottom present this rather graphically. And if you have children, or when you have children, you will realize that this is something that can happen quite easily. Next, please. This is a composite slide. It shows you all the major features of poliovirus infection. What's important to note is that not all these features may be present, but the virus will be present in your throat secretions for a couple of days before any symptoms occur. It will also be present in feces, and in feces for quite a long time, for up to 7 weeks, but it does eventually disappear, and probably in the bloodstream. But it's a thing to notice that you are infectious before you have any symptoms. Neurological symptoms are rare, and we'll see this on the next slide if we go on. Next, please, Phil. In children under 5, most infections, nearly 3/4 of infections, have no symptoms whatsoever. Another quarter will have a mild flu-like illness, which is typical of virus infections. That 4.5% will have what we call aseptic meningitis, which you recover from completely. You just end up with a headache, neck stiffness, and so on. And only 1 in 200 children under 5 will develop what we call acute flaccid paralysis, which the consequences are that we see children with loss of muscles because the neurons in their spinal cord that served those muscles have died, and the muscles die as well. So basically, one would say that generally in children, the symptoms that we see of paralysis are extremely rare, which means this is a very difficult virus to track in the community because we only see those children with paralysis. Can we go on next, please? I'm now going to move on to polio eradication after that brief review of the disease itself. Polio eradication, the campaigns began way back in the time of Franklin D. Roosevelt, who himself had polio, or possibly had polio, when he was aged in around 1921. The American public never knew that he'd had polio. He was in a wheelchair, and when he stood, he had an iron frame to support him. But politically, that is a weakness that people don't like. But throughout his presidency, he supported polio eradication. His president's birthday balls were for polio eradication. And in 1938, he founded the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, which was an alliance between scientists and volunteers. And the volunteers raised money for polio, basically to start with, for ways of looking into ways of treating people. But later on, the money went to the development of vaccines. And most of the cost of the development of the vaccines was supported by this association. It was called March of the Dimes. That was a phrase coined by Eddie Cantor, who was an entertainer. And many entertainers were involved and supported the campaign. Most significantly, Elvis Presley, who actually had himself vaccinated once a vaccine was available on live television. But the two vaccine pioneers, and there are other names, are Jonas Salk and Albert Sabin. In the late 1940s, it was discovered that you could grow poliovirus in cells, cultured cells from monkey kidney, rather than in living animals, which was all that was possible before. And it was Jonas Salk who produced the first killed vaccine. Jonas was the son of Jewish immigrants, and he was working at the laboratory in Pittsburgh. And based on his experience during the war of working on killed influenza vaccine, he realized that you could create a vaccine for polio in the same way. And this vaccine is inactivated with formaldehyde. It's perfectly safe. It has to be given by injection, and it was licensed in 1955 after very extensive trials in American school children in 1954. Albert Sabin, on the right, also came from Russia. He was an immigrant at the age of 15. He developed an interest in vaccines whilst he was at medical school, and he began his research into polio in the 1930s. But during the war, he was in the US Army Medical Corps and didn't return to his research until after the war was over. Like many other scientists at the time, he believed that although killed vaccines were effective, that the best immunity came with using live attenuated vaccines, and that an oral vaccine, such as for polio, was much easier to administer. Unfortunately, he was not supported with large field trials because of the success of the Salk vaccine, and he carried out trials in Russia, in the USSR. But his vaccine was approved by the US Public Health Service in 1961 for manufacture in the United States. Next, please. This just shows you a comparison of the two vaccines. You will be getting this presentation if you want it, and my script. The thing to show is that the killed vaccine has to be injected. It's highly effective, but it doesn't block transmission. It only protects against disease. The live vaccine is given by orally, originally on a sugar lump when we were children. It gives lifelong immunity, and it not only prevents disease, but it blocks transmission. But there are side effects, very rare, but those are side effects. I'm not going to talk about those, but it is to know that eventually in every country of the world, oral polio vaccine will be replaced by the inactivated vaccine. Next, please. This is just to go back. This is an acute timeline in England and Wales. And polio was endemic throughout the world in all countries for thousands of years. But children were infected during the first year of life. They were protected by maternal antibody. So they didn't develop disease, but they could transmit the virus to other people. And so virus transmission was going on in the community. And a majority of the populations would have been immune by the time they were a year old, or not much older. It was social changes that saw the emergence of polio epidemics. And this was to do with increased wealth, with better hygiene, and also that with children were infected later in life because they had fewer contacts and because of the way that their families lived. And what happened was that throughout the 20th century, we saw these epidemics in all the developed countries of the world, but not in the developing world until after the Second World War, from the 50s onwards. The thing that happened in the developed countries after the Second World War, there's the explosion in the number of cases. And if you assume that only 1 in 200 children are paralyzed, it would mean that in the United Kingdom, one can estimate that about nearly 750,000 children every year in that period were infected out of a population in the United Kingdom of 42 million people. Unfortunately, in Britain, Salk's vaccine was introduced in 1956, but it was rationed. And only about 75% of children received it, so that it wasn't until the introduction of the oral polio vaccine in 1962 that we saw this massive and radical striking disappearance of polio. And the last case, indigenous case in the UK, was 1984. We're now going to have a series of slides that Phil is going to run while I'm talking, a series of maps. These will show for a little while. Rotary's commitment to polio eradication began in 1978, 1979, when the Australian president of Rotary International, Sir Clem Renouf, asked a Rotary member who was a medical authority what disease Rotary should take on. And the advice was that if we were going to do anything, we should get rid of polio. And as the Sabin vaccine was readily available, easy to give, he proposed to the board of Rotary's board of directors that we should adopt the eradication of polio and the alleviation of its consequences as the primary humanitarian goal of Rotary. The first grant was for $760,000 from the Rotary International, and it was used to immunize 6 million children in the Philippines. And here we see the president the following year giving drops to a child in the Philippines, which was the beginning of Rotary's polio immunization effort. The success of this project expanded into the polio eradication program on an unprecedented scale. And in February 1982, Rotary adopted the goal of immunizing all the world's children against polio by the time of the 100th anniversary of Rotary International in 2005, which is when I was district governor. And in 1984, Rotary assembled a committee that included Albert Sabin, but also somebody from the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia, to develop this expanded program. And the program used massive national immunization days for mass polio vaccination and greatly increased funding from Rotary. The initial fundraising goal was $120 million, but within 3 years, Rotarians had raised twice that amount, donating $247 million. The program was called Polio Plus, and the plus is about the extras that you give. It's not just giving vaccine. Depending on where you are, it might be a hand-operated tricycle, access clean water, and so on. And most strikingly, vitamin A drops, which have really made a significant reduction in deaths from children by decreasing susceptibility to other diseases. Moving on now, thank you, Phil. In 1988, mainly because of the proven success of Rotary projects and advocacy of Rotary leaders, the World Health Assembly adopted a resolution on the global eradication of polio. And the 6 partners in this global polio eradication campaign were the 6 partners now, but the 4 original partners were WHO, CDC Atlanta, and UNICEF, working with Rotary. Rotary is the key that brought them all together. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation joined in a little later, and it was because of Rotary and because the way that we could raise money and were committed to raising money that Bill Gates committed himself then to matching, originally 1-to-1 what Rotarians give, but now, as we know, he gives $2 for every dollar that Rotarians raise. But Rotary also brought other people into this campaign, not just the original partners, not just Bill Gates and now the Global Vaccine Alliance, but many governments also were persuaded by influential Rotarians that this was something that they should be involved in. So the lobbying of Rotarians throughout the whole of this time has been extremely important. Today, while polio virus is circulating, as you've heard, in only these 2 countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan, there have been no cases since January and very few positive environmental samples. So now Rotary's dream of a polio-free world is in sight. But our commitment to raise $50 million from Rotarians across the world every year must not waver. And we've achieved that for the last few years, sometimes at the last moment, but we have achieved it. And until the eradication of wild polio has been ratified by the WHO, which we hope might be within 3 or 4 years, we must continue to make this our priority. This is our #1 humanitarian project. And as long as we maintain our levels of giving, we will get the Gates Foundation matching. That's promised for another 2 years at least. And by the beginning of this Rotary year, that is July this year, the Rotary contribution financially to the campaign had reached almost $2.4 billion. And I think we're going to have a slide that actually shows that in a minute, or well, the Global Vaccine Alliance coming in.
5 minutes, Keith.
All right, I've got a timer on. This shows you the picture in Afghanistan and Pakistan in the dramatic decrease. There was a peak in 2019, but the dramatic decrease since then is really remarkable. And then these are difficult countries. So the dream of a polio-free world is in sight. And this again shows the decrease across the world as well. And it's amazing that in India, where there were so many cases, that polio was eradicated in 2010. Those of you who've been on polio eradication campaigns will have received one of those nice little jackets with something on. And where the money goes is widespread. It doesn't just go to vaccine, it goes to all the other areas, research, it goes to surveillance, making sure that we don't see polio in the environment and so on. And every year we vaccinate on average 450 million children at the cost of about 36 pence per child. Rotary is the 3rd largest contributor over the period up to, this maps up to 2019. After the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that is extra to what they give Rotary and the United States government. I'm pleased to say that the United Kingdom government has been a major donor. If we go on to the last slides though, and this shows where the money has been distributed. It's been countries all around the world, but a lot in Pakistan and Afghanistan and India. with which this country has quite historic links. And there is a shortfall because of COVID-19, which has caused problems, and the Global Polio Eradication Initiative has come out with a call to action. But what happens if we don't continue? WHO estimates that if we stopped now, if we stop the mass campaigns, there could be 200,000 new cases a year worldwide in many countries within 10 years. And this shows that from the epicenter of Afghanistan, Pakistan, these are all the links, air links to other parts of the world. There used to be, or was, an aeroplane a day came into Manchester from Pakistan, because we have a large Pakistani community in our city. And the last slide is really the alarming one. That's the picture we could see. But let's put it another way. More than 18 million people are able to walk today who would otherwise have been paralyzed. We've seen that 1.25 million children have not died because they've received vitamin A. And that economically, abolishing polio, eradicating polio, will save the world at least 40 to 50 billion US dollars per year, mostly in low-income countries. But most importantly, the success means that no child will ever again suffer the terrible effects of lifelong polio paralysis.
Thank you very much indeed. Going to move swiftly on now. Our next speaker is Brenda Parsons, and she's going to talk to us about presenting to Rotary.
Thanks very much, Adrian. First of all, great hi to everyone. Hope you're all still awake. I'm just going to give you some handy hints about linking in with Rotary clubs that you'll specifically need to do so during the year. Now, I know that some of us are naturally much better than others than keeping in touch with friends and family. And obviously, while you're away, your friends and family will be interested in what you're doing. And I know you will keep in touch with them. I know as a mum, I like to keep in touch with my family. Now you are part of the wider family of Rotary, it would be really, really great if you could keep in touch with us too. And in particular, with your home host Rotary club, your home club, that's your sponsor club, and of course your host club here in Great Britain. So it is important you do that because, you know, we're really interested in knowing how you're getting on, what you're doing, and also making sure that, you know, we're happy that you're well and that everything's going just hunky-dory. So your host club will be really, really interested, in particular in knowing about your previous experiences, what's led to you taking up your Rotary scholarship, and of course your plans for the future. You know, we're like your aunties and uncles. We're interested in you. So please make sure that you do keep in touch. Now, they also are there in the wings just in case you've got any concerns. So that's always good to know as well, isn't it? Now, what I would like to say is that you don't have to have big formal links in with them, but, you know, the odd telephone call, the WhatsApp, the email, anything like that, which is a little bit more informal, is just fine. And if you can, from time to time, meet up for a coffee, that will be really good, because it's just fun. It's really lovely that we're able to hear all about what you're doing and your interests, because it's really, really good that we can give you the best support that we can. Now, they will be inviting you to move to your, so stay connected. Slide number 2. Okay, so you will be asked to be speaking to Rotarians. Your club will be, your link club will ask you to speak to them. Now, what is important is that you do find out all the backgrounds of what it is they want, where it is. I'm not going to read the slide out because you can read perfectly well what's there, but it is important that you ask the right questions. You know, some of you will be being asked to do an online Zoom meeting. Others of you may be asked to do a face-to-face meeting. At the minute, you know, some clubs are doing one thing, some clubs are doing another. And it is important that you do all ask all the right questions, so you're absolutely certain who's going to be doing the slides, who's going, you know, is it an opportunity for slides, or is it just a 2 or 3 minute input, or is it something which is longer? What would they like to find out? Find out exactly what it is they want, how long you need to speak for, what sort of an occasion. All of these things are really, really important. Next slide. And of course, next slide. And of course, it is important to keep your audience engaged. So we missed that one. And that is, make sure that you don't speak too long, that you speak for the length of time that you've been asked for. Don't get too worried about making it all too fancy, because the important thing really is that be yourself, be enthusiastic, and everybody there from Rotary is all on your side. And this will be an opportunity for you to practice your public speaking. Now, I know all of you will have been doing public speaking and presentations as part of your courses coming up to now, but when it's a new opportunity, then it's different. So nothing is too small to ask, all right? So please don't be frightened to say, you know, what do I have to do about this? Will you do that? Will someone collect me? How do I get there? Do I need to be there a bit early or whatever to set up? However, if you are doing a face-to-face, I know what always comes up is, what should I wear? Okay, and you can see here some slides of people, of our scholars actually doing some presenting. Now this really, it depends on what sort of occasion it is. Is it a formal occasion? Even if it's formal, usually ties aren't required, but you know, something which is smart is a good idea. Really, it's usually the in-between, so you don't have to go suited and booted, but you know, if you could just not wear your jeans which have got all the tears in, somewhere in between usually works really, really well. Okay, so all you have to be is enthusiastic about what you're doing. All the club members will be interested. They may actually bring other people along, and quite often we have it's possible for 2 scholars to go along to one club and then 2 scholars to another and share the speaking, because you know, you've got different backgrounds and we're all really, really interested in you. Okay, next slide please. Now there will be opportunities. Next slide. There will be opportunities for tourist activities. So if people are interested, we've gone up 2 slides now. Can you go back one, please? Thanks. If people are interested in, if you've got certain interests, then I know that your Rotarians will be really, really pleased to take you to see and you know, to meet your interests. So if, for example, this is our scholar from last year, when we were able to come out, we actually went off to Chinatown and had a wander around central London. But she was particularly interested in art galleries. But you know, someone else, some of you may not be interested in that. So you don't want to be dragged around art galleries if that's not what you're interested in. So, you know, do share what it is you're interested in, and then your sightseeing, your club will help you with that, or indeed assist you with putting together programs which you and your friends can do. Now, as well as that, then you will have the fantastic opportunity of actually volunteering with your own Rotary club or Rotary clubs that others of your scholars are involved with. So if we move on to our next slide. So in my area, we have, in our next slide, please, Phil. Yeah, in our area, we have a Santa run, and with the Santa run, we had our scholar actually started it off, which was quite exciting. So she came out as an elf. So there are a lot of activities that our scholars have actually come and helped with. They've helped with lunches for dementia. They've helped with our youth competitions. Some of them have actually helped at the vaccination centres. And here we have our scholar from the year before last, who's actually helping in December with Santa, and also went out with the Santa sleigh, which is really quite exciting too, as an elf. Okay, if we move on to our next activity, our next slide, please. Okay, now you've heard quite a bit about Rotaract today, and many of you might be interested to know that there is also an international Global Connectors Rotaract, which has been running over the last year. And these Rotaractors actually are all global scholars that have come from all over Great Britain and Ireland. And as they go on to the next part of their journey, they are going to stay within that Rotaract family until the point in which they'd like to be Rotarians, and they can actually stay within that group or choose to go to somewhere else. And just as we were coming out, had a gap in the COVID went down, we had some of our global connectors went out raising funds, but they did a lot of work online supporting each other, and also they actually did English conversation for young people same sort of age as them, who had English as a second language. So they decided on which projects they were going to do, and they've had some fun, and actually they've decided that it should be continue to be an e-club, so that they can continue to be in the club. So that's really great as well. Okay, last slide then. So all I can say is that, you know, you're here, you've done absolutely so tremendously well to actually to achieve one of the Rotary scholarships. You are la creme de la creme. Study well, have fun, enjoy your new Rotary family, and please take up as many opportunities as you can. And Rotary is here to support you as much as we can possibly do to make this year one of the really most special years of your life. It's a life changer. Okay, enjoy yourself, folks.
Brenda, thank you very, very much indeed. That was really, really uplifting and a really fantastic finish to our day today. We're going to move on now to John. So if anyone has any questions, please either put them in chat or raise your hand, and we will dive in and help you answer them. Just one small point here. Once we've finished the Q&A session, we're going to do a formal wrap up and a thank you, and then we are going to have a couple of moments silence, and then we're going to move on, and Eve is going to redo her whole section again from earlier on, so we can get the video right because of the problems that our techie guy was having. If you want to stay on and listen to Eve do her whole talk again, you are more than welcome. But at the end of it, it will be a sharp drop and we will finish the session then. So John, all over to you now for our final Q&A.
Thank you, Adrian. So as I put in chat just now, any questions at all really about your scholarships, about what we've done today, questions for any of the speakers? They're not all being able to stay until now, but if you have questions for them, one of us on the call may be able to answer them. If we can't answer them, we'll get answers for you and send them to you later. So if you have questions, please use the reactions button, use the hands up function in there. Or if you can't find the hands up function, don't be afraid to unmute yourself and speak up, or put something in the chat box if you prefer. Have we satisfied all your queries, questions, thoughts, concerns? Anything else you'd like to say?
We're all keen to get out there and get on with it, John.
Sounds like it, yes. We recognise you've all had a very long morning, so it may be that you're all feeling a little bit tired now. What I'm going to suggest then, unless any questions come up before I finish speaking, is that we. Oh, hang on. There are some questions coming in on the chat. Right, Anna has asked, for Rotaract clubs, where can we find information for those in our areas? I'm going to suggest probably the best way we can do that. Adrian, will you have Anna's email address?
Yes,
we'll get an answer for that because we'll be able to sort out which area you're in, Anna, and we'll get an answer and send those directly to you.
John, this is Richard in Thames Valley. Just to mention on the Rotaract, at our meeting coming up, our briefing, we have the Rotaractors there to actually try and get people to join there and then. So it will be there.
Okay, that's good. So is Anna one of your scholars then, Richard? Is that the point?
No, she's not actually. At least I don't think. No, she's not. But.
Well, we'll answer Anna directly, but it's good to know that you're doing that as well, Richard. Thank you.
John, if I could come in and say that I'll make sure that Adrian's got the Rotaractor, who is the president this year for the Global Connectors for the Scholars. Okay.
That's good. Thank you, Brenda.
And that's for anybody if they've not got a Rotaract near them.
I'll leave you to work with Adrian on answering Anna's question. Then.
Thanks very much, Brenda.
Now, Fanny Yai, sorry, I've not got your full name up here. It asks, is there any way we can get connected with the scholars here? How can we meet scholars in the area? Now, I'd love to be able to say to you, we'll share all your email addresses with you. Unfortunately, in Great Britain and Ireland, the law and the way Rotary interprets it is such that we cannot freely distribute email addresses for individuals to others without permissions. I think probably the best way I can do this, unless anyone's going to tell me this has been done already, I don't think it has for this group. The best way really is if you're willing for your email address to be shared with the others on this call, if you were to drop a very quick note to Adrian, you'll have his email address from the invitations. A quick email to Adrian or Phil, whose email address you've all definitely got because he sent you the invitations. We'll amalgamate those two together. And we will then, for those of you who give us permission, we'll redistribute your email address widely to the whole group. So if you're happy for us to share your email address with the other scholars, and that's the only purpose we'll use it for, we'll share it with the other scholars, but we do need your permission. So if you'd like to send your email address with your saying, yes, I give permission, to Adrian or Phil, then we'll organise that over the next few days. I'm sorry to be awkward about it, but we have to be careful about the data protection laws in England or in Great Britain and Ireland. Right, I think the only other point I've got on the chat is someone has sent me a chat. One of the issues raised in our breakout was transferring money from overseas, and there's just been put to me, we forward the suggestion to use a company called TransferWise, as they're finding it's a cheap way of doing it. I can't say we can formally endorse it, but that's obviously the experience of someone else somewhere in the group. Alyssa has suggested you can set up a Facebook group between yourselves. Of course, entirely possible. Others might want to do a WhatsApp group. Maybe those of you who are in any one university might want to do one or other of those, or whatever. Yes, of course. If we get your contact details, we can put you in touch with each other. We'd be delighted if you stay in contact, Brenda said, with your Rotary clubs, both where you come from, where you are now, and also with each other. That's really part of the purpose of today. I think I'm going to stop there because I've not got any more questions or comments in the chat box, or no more hands up. And if that's the case, first off, I'm going to just finish by saying particular thanks to Adrian and Phil, who've put an enormous amount of work into pulling this together. Commiserations to Phil for your techie problems. We know that's absolutely not what usually happens with you, Phil. You've had real bad luck this morning. I'm sure we all sympathise with you. And I'll thank all the presenters and facilitators as well. But I know Adrian probably wants to say very much the same, but I want to make sure that I include Adrian in saying that, because he's done an enormous amount of work to put all this together. So over to Adrian to finish up the session for us.
Thanks very much, John. So yeah, really just to echo what John has said, thank you very much indeed to everyone that's been here. So thank you very much to Eve, thank you to Ray, thank you to John, thank you to Amanda, thank you to Prakash for getting out of bed. Thank you to Keith, thank you to Brenda, and thank you most of all to actually you, the scholars, because without you, it wouldn't have happened at all. So it's been an absolutely fantastic morning. It's always illuminating to hear what's happening in Rotary and in other parts of Rotary as well. And thank you all very much indeed. I hope to come across most of you between now and the time you go home, particularly the London scholars who will see me all at our district conference, October the 15th to the 17th. I look forward to seeing you all, and I wish you all the very best with your studies. And that's about it from me. So we're going to wrap up on this wonderful day.